To order, welcome everybody to the July 5th meeting of the Temple Terrace City Council. If you would, please remember to silence all your electronic devices, and we should make sure we've done the same. Okay. If you would, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Invocation. Vice Mayor?
O God in heaven, please bless us as we join together tonight to do the business of the city. Thank you for the opportunity to come together yesterday in the 4th of July activities, showing how well we can get along as a community and celebrate the holiday. Bless this council to do the next right thing for all involved. And bless our employees and especially our first responders that protect us every day and every night. In your most holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Our first order of business is a proclamation for Parks and Recreation Month. This seems like a fitting time to do this. I'll call Director Carl Langfeld to the podium, please. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Are you rested up yet?
I'm getting there.
You're getting there. So we have a proclamation for Parks and Rec Month, and I'd like to share this with everybody. Proclamation reads, whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country and are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our community, ensuring the health of our citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. Whereas parks and recreation programs provide therapeutic recreation services, improving the mental and emotional health of all citizens. Parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity, increasing property values, increasing tourism, as well as reducing crime. And whereas parks and recreation programs are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. Our park and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for adults to connect with nature and children to play outdoors. And whereas the United States House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, Temple Terrace recognizes the benefits derived from park and recreation services. And by virtue of the authority vested in me as the Mayor of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, I do hereby proclaim the month of July as Parks and Recreation Month. So Carl, would you like to say a few words?
I would, if I may.
Sure.
Today, I think, is a very fitting day to be recognizing Parks and Recreation Month. I'd like to just kind of take a few moments to talk about yesterday's activities and the 4th of July and how that event has been a signature event in this city for almost 50 years. I believe yesterday was the 47th annual 4th of July celebration in Temple Terrace. And it truly is an event that brings all parts of this community together. Adult, children, all ages come out for the parade, come out for the fireworks, and I'm sure all of you did as well as I, walk around on the fairway during the activities prior to the fireworks and see this entire community come together. The children play together, the parents socialize together, and just have a wonderful evening. And that is such a huge part of what Parks and Recreation does, and one of the things that I love most about my job. However, to pull off an event like that takes a small army behind the scenes. Without the assistance from our police department, our fire department, our public works department, our utilities department, and a multitude of volunteers assisting, we could not make the 4th of July celebration in Temple Terrace happen the way it does. And I am hugely appreciative of all of their efforts and the generosity of the sponsors who stepped up to help make our 4th of July celebration happen, to Tico and to Joanne Kelly Properties, to Ward Mitchell Attorneys. All these people stepped up, contributed, helped make this event such a huge success for the entire community. So I want to thank all of them, and I want to thank you for your support in helping us pull this off and continuing to provide us with the funding that we need to make this event happen. So thank you to all as well.
Carl, thank you. And I have to tell you that after an event like yesterday, when I get here, all the council members are like, I want to tell them thank you. I want to tell them thank you. So I get to do that on behalf of all of them, but they all feel the same way. And you and your staff, and you mentioned as a whole army of people, all departments of our city were involved in that behind the scenes. And, you know, a great event, which you do all the time, is one that when you go to it, you think, wow, that just went so easy, when in fact it's not easy. It's just smooth because it's planned properly and executed properly. And I particularly want to thank the people that were along the parade route, the citizen volunteers. You might have seen some of them. They're wearing the neon Temple Terrace shirts, and they stood out there in 98 humidity. You know, it was, I don't know what the heat index was, but it's like the surface of the sun. And they stood out there during the whole parade, and they're not making any overtime. They're just doing it because they love the city. So I hope some of them are watching, and we thank you for your service and everybody. And I hope everybody got to come out and enjoy it. And so I'll give you the proclamation. Filling in? I'm filling in. Doing double duty there. Next, we have Mr. Brian Hubert and Ryan Gessman of Huge Creations and Designs, if you'd like to approach, gentlemen. This is a Temple Terrace business who is here to present the city with a gift. And I will let Brian and Ryan explain. Welcome, gentlemen.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Hubert. This is Ryan Gessman, and we own Huge Creations and Design here in Temple Terrace. And most people know us for our custom guitars that we build. However, we use our skills and machinery to make other things as well. And so we actually made this really interesting multi-layered map of Temple Terrace that we'd like to give to the city in celebration of the upcoming centennial and just the continued growth of the city. We both are long-term residents of the city and are really excited to see where it's come and where it's going as well. So
it's been fun building a relationship, especially with the Temple Terrace Arts Council, and we look forward to fostering that relationship further with the city as time goes forward. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. So that's for us?
that is for you.
Very good. Well, I'm good at coming down and taking stuff. I'll do that. Just stay there. I'll come down. James, Arts Council.
Oh, okay. Sure. Up to it. Looks good.
Thank you so much. Okay, smile. And one more. Thank you. Nice. I don't know if you guys can see, but it's 3D. It's like these lakes down here. The river's like a lower level. It's really nice. So we'll put this on display, either one of these cases or maybe at the library. I'm not sure where we'll get the most. Yeah, very nice. Actually, if you guys pass it around if you'd like. This police chief's in the back, so we don't get back. Just, yeah, take a look at it. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for that gift. Brian's just hoping nobody drops it, right? Council, has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from the previous meeting?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move to
Approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Vice Mayor, a second by Councilmember Abel. If the minutes are acceptable, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Now is the time for public comment for items. Okay, you have to look. You have to look quietly. So now is public comment for persons wishing to be heard on items not listed on the agenda or items that are on the consent agenda. That's none. We do have a 3-minute time limit. We ask that all members of the public approach the podium, state their name and city of residence. We do like to assure everybody that your concerns are taken very seriously by the city manager, council members, the directors in attendance, and we do follow up on all your concerns. I currently have no requests to speak at this point. There are forms in the back. Does anybody wish to address the council on items not on the agenda? Okay. Next item is a resolution approving a task work order to Asphalt Paving Systems, Inc. for general asphalt repaving, resurfacing. City Engineer Brian McCarthy is here to explain. Welcome, Brian.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council, Brian McCarthy, City Engineer, and I'm here today seeking approval for a task work order to Asphalt Paving Systems for roadway resurfacing work. And if I can get the screen. Just to give you a quick overview of where the streets are that we'll be resurfacing. Starting in the upper right-hand corner, we have East 113th Avenue and Lynn Banks Place. And moving further south towards the middle of your screen to the left is Lantern Circle. And down in the bottom left, we have Rachel Avenue, Oak Ridge Avenue, Redwood Avenue, and Linda Avenue. And this task work order includes general milling and resurfacing and restriping type of activities. Excuse me. That said, staff recommends approval of the expenditure of $240,657.98 to Asphalt Paving Systems for roadway resurfacing work. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Okay, council member, any questions for the city engineer? Vice Mayor.
How were these chosen? I'm sure you have a criteria, and I'm sure the people watching would be interested in hearing it too.
So we do have a 5-year plan. Some of these roads are not within that 5-year plan just because we have water main projects going on down in the southern portion of the city, south of Bullard Parkway. So until those water main projects are completed, then we'll start going back to our plan. But in general, these roads are somewhere within the pavement condition index of in the 50s and 60s. Actually, I think Rachel Avenue, there's a portion of it that's still in the 30s within the poor conditions. So we're just moving some of them up while we push back some of the other ones until those water main projects are done.
Thank you.
Other questions for the city engineer? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. Motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? I would like to point out something to the public on this. We talk a lot about how Temple Terrace is really good city and we provide excellent services. And just by way of comparison, our city streets are on about a 24-year repaving schedule. So what that means is about every 24 years, maybe 22 in some cases, 28 in others, but on about a 24-year paving schedule, all of our city streets are resurfaced. And just so you have some comparison to go by, the city of Tampa's repaving schedule is currently 75 years. So when you wonder what makes Temple Terrace special in addition to the 4th of July, there's nothing jazzy, I know, about asphalt repaving, but it is if you drive down the road and fall in a pothole. So just so you know, we are on this repaving schedule, which is very aggressive compared to our surrounding neighbors. So, other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? No nays. We will repave some streets, Brian. Next item is a first public hearing and first reading of Ordinance 1530, amending Exhibit C of Ordinance 1441, expanding the permitted uses on Site B of the approved conceptual plan included in RZP 17-13. There's a lot there, Gus.
There is a lot.
I'll open the public hearing and introduce Senior Planner Gus Carpus to explain.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. What you have before you is a first public hearing of an ordinance amending Exhibit C, which was originally approved as part of Ordinance 1441, and this would expand the permitted uses on Site B of the concept plan that was approved with Ordinance 1441. So if I go, he didn't turn it on because you're only on one slide. Okay. So there's going to be a little bit of reading here. I apologize for that. So Ordinance 1441 was adopted in 2017, and what it did is it took Lot 7A of the Tampa Telecom Park Development Regional Impact. It rezoned it from Planned Research Office, PROF, to Plan Development, the PD, and then also creating the layout of the site. Exhibit C, again, laid out the approved uses for those 6 parcels. It was platted out into 6 parcels. And those uses were limited to office, medical office, restaurant, and general retail. JT Retail LLC has approached the city asking, and I can do this so you can get a better view of the site. So what you've got on the left is the property as it sits right now. Lots B and C have not been platted at this point. It would be when we got a site plan for either one of those. And then on the right there is the plan as approved, the concept plan showing all 6 lots. At this point, you've only got sites B and C are the only ones not developed at this point in time. So, here's what was adopted as Exhibit C. It pulled out Site A, and I can go back here. It pulled out Site A, which is all the way to the west, and it's the larger parcel for the racetrack. And then the other 5 parcels were left with the 4 uses. Again, the medical office, restaurant, and general retail. So Exhibit C, approved uses. This is how it is written, excuse me, right now. Okay, so what you have here then is, excuse me again, I'm sorry about that, is the proposed edits. What the proposal would do with this request is take out item B, which addresses the remaining 5 lots, takes that completely out, then puts site B, expands the use to allow the automobile washing service. They have a car wash client potentially looking at the site. What it would do is it would allow a car wash under the same conditions that they would be allowed in the commercial general. So this would be changing the ordinance if the council were to approve it. There would still need to be a site plan and a conditional use permit applied for later for the site. So we create a new site B by pulling out site B, and then we retain sites C through F with the same 4 uses that there always was. Also, site B, if the car wash falls through, they default back to the office, medical office, restaurant, and general retail use. So that's what the proposed changes are, taking out that B, creating a B and C. Why? There we go. And so what the ordinance would look like then, or Exhibit C in the ordinance would look like this. Again, pulling out A and B, and then regulating C and F to the 4 uses. Again, site B, approving the language would not automatically approve anything for that. They would still need to go through the process of a site plan and a conditional use. I did put a condition on this and limited it to the 1.01 acres, western portion. Since the property is not platted at this point, those 2 parcels, we want to make sure that parcel B does not exceed the 1.01 acres, which is around the size that was approved with the concept plan. And then site C then would still then be under the other development regulations. There would be no changes to that. So I did recommend approval of the first reading for the ordinance to expand the permitted uses on site B, allowing it as a conditional use per the ordinance requirements as they sit right now in the commercial general. And excuse me again, it's conditioned to that western 1.01 acres of the parcel there that remains. That is what I have here. The applicant, I don't know who would have anything to add for the council, but.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Thank you for hearing my request this evening. As Mr. Carpus mentioned, we've developed 6 out parcels, and we appreciate the city's support to date. We do have 6 out parcels, 4 of which have been developed. We have a Starbucks, a USF Credit Union. I'm building a 6,400 square foot center on parcel D, and we have a racetrack on parcel A. Racetrack did not include a car wash facility on their parcel, and we've had an overwhelming amount of interest on parcel B, which is the smallest of all 6 parcels from car wash companies. One in particular, by the name of Mod Wash, would like to put a single conveyor car wash, so it's a fairly small, quiet car wash concept on parcel B, and I intend to remain with the current zoning on parcel C and develop what we hope what will be a sit-down breakfast and lunch concept, because that use is needed pretty badly out in that area. So I just want to thank the city for hearing me tonight, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. So prior to questions, we go to public comment, but are there members of the public who wish to comment on this? Seeing none, council member questions for staff or the petitioner? Councilmember Abel.
My question is, when Ordinance 1441 was originally written and the permitted uses were originally conceived of, my question is, what was the thought process behind that, and was there an intention to maybe change those depending on what developers wanted at that time?
It's hard to tell because I looked at the minutes, so it's hard to tell on what, typically that whole area, you're looking at the uses in there are supposed to be servicing the professional office. And so I think pulling this out, they were going to expand the uses, but still kind of keep it retail, general office, which is kind of what the other stuff is. I didn't see anything in the minutes which really clarified why they didn't allow a bunch of things that they limited to this. I didn't see anything.
Okay. And my next question might be a little left field, and I'm sorry if I'm a little out of range with that, but for a car wash facility, does the wastewater from that go into the sanitary sewer? Just curious. It's not stormwater runoff, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
There's obviously soap and chemicals and stuff like that. Sometimes a car wash will have a specific type of recirculating system within their. They don't. Depends upon how it's designed. So they could discharge into the sanitary sewer depending upon their treatment level, or they could design it to being recirculating. So they'll reuse the wash water that they have on site.
Okay, thank you. I'll cross that bridge more when I get to it. That's all my questions for now.
That would be part of the DRC review
Right. Thank you.
if we get a site plan.
Other questions? Councilmember Chambers.
Thank you. I think you mentioned that if the car wash if we change the parcel B and the car wash didn't happen, it would revert back.
Yeah, so the only uses that would be permitted on site B are the 4 uses right now, plus a car wash. So what we're doing is just expanding it to allow one additional use, which would be the car wash, limited to site B. So the office, a medical office, restaurant, and retail is the, base zoning. This is just expanding it to allow one other use. So if someone doesn't develop it as a car wash, they're back to the other four items that are permitted.
Okay, but since it would be in the ordinance, if someone wanted to build a car wash 30 years from now on that, they could, because.
That's
it's permitted.
exactly correct.
Okay, thank you. I just had to understand it.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you. I did have a question that was related to what Meredith was talking about. So I couldn't understand what you had said. Is it going into the sanitary sewer?
There's a couple options depending upon how it's designed. So you can either treat it to a point to where it can go into the sanitary sewer, or they can do like a recirculating system where they'll just reuse the water, treat it on site, and just push it back out within the car wash.
I'm just concerned that there's an extensive wetlands right behind there too. There's a huge retention pond that's very, very big. And I would like to see some kind of containment designed into it so that, you know, I realize that it's not, they don't want to just let it run down the street. I understand that. But I would just hate to see there be some kind of I'd like to see some kind of containment system put in there so that it's recirculated or whatever. And maybe that's not for this point.
Yeah, when they submit for the conditional use permit, that
Okay.
could be reviewed, and that could be a condition
Okay,
of the
all right.
council.
Okay, all right, I'm good otherwise.
Right, and just to give you some comfort level, there's all kinds of DEP regulations
Yeah.
on this too that would kick in. We're just not at that
We're
point.
not there, and that's fine.
Yeah, there's no point in applying for that if we don't approve the concept to begin with, so, yeah, so.
I'm good.
You're on the right path,
Yeah,
just, yeah.
thank you.
Other questions? City Attorney.
I had just one comment. Since the reversion to the original four uses may occur, before you vote on it, let's see, under 2 approved uses, under letter C, instead of it having sites C through F, it should probably remain B through F.
Okay.
So that all of the uses would apply to Site B. So,
can make-
because right now, the way it reads, it's like Site B can only be the car wash. So you understand?
I can make that change for the second reading.
And that would come before us in second reading. Okay. Other questions? Okay. If not, I will close the public hearing and ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, amending Ordinance 1441 and Exhibit C attached thereto, adopted November 21st, 2017, to expand the permitted uses on Site B of the approved contractual plan, included in RZP 17-13, as part of the original ordinance approval, providing a severability clause and effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there a motion?
I move to approve as read.
Second.
A motion to approve on first reading with the amendments that the city attorney
With the
discussed.
amendments,
And a second by the vice mayor. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? No nays. Ordinance is passed on first reading. Thank you. Next item is the first public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending City Code Sections 2-200 and 2-257 regarding membership on Fire Pension Board of Trustees and the Police Pension Board of Trustees. I'll open the public hearing and ask the City Attorney Pam Shoshone to explain.
Thank you. This is a very tiny amendment to each one of these sections, one concerning Fire Pension Board of Trustees, one concerning Police Pension Board of Trustees. It's the exact same amendment for both, and all it does is make reference to that the mayor and or vice mayor may hold positions on those Board of Trustees ex officio to their elected offices. We had done quite a bit of research when the mayor and the vice mayor both took positions on these boards recently to make sure that there wasn't going to be any problem with dual office holding. In the course of doing all of that research, it turned out that language is very, very important. And so we wanted to make sure that we had some language in our ordinance that would cover both the mayor and the vice mayor on into the future if they choose to serve on those boards. And we wrote it as may, and we wrote it as and or, so that both of them may serve, neither may serve, either one of them may serve, and it gave you the option because it's possible that a mayor or vice mayor in the future doesn't want to serve on the board, but this way you are permitted to do it. It is definitely stated ex officio, and that will protect those positions into the future from dual office holding. We ran across a case where an HR director was holding 2 positions. The ordinance of that city said that she should hold one ex officio. The other ordinance did not mention it at all, and so she was okay with the one, and it turned out it was dual office holding when she took the other. So it was important that we include this in our ordinance. Also, you may note that unlike many of our ordinances, this one does not become effective immediately upon your approving it and it being signed. It becomes effective immediately upon approval by the Police Pension Board of Trustees and the Fire Pension Board of Trustees, because in discussion with their attorney, it's important that they also consider any change to the ordinance. And she didn't indicate that there would be a problem with approving it, but it leaves it still sort of open until that's done.
Thank you, Mrs. Schoen. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this? Council member questions? I do have one, Mrs. Schoen. Is there any reason why this, I understand what we're doing, and I think it's necessary, good idea, but is there any reason why this needs to be or should be restricted to the mayor or vice mayor? Because the mayor, depending on who occupies that position, they may or may not have expertise or interest, and the vice mayor, of course, that assignment rotates every year, so that person could be halfway through their pension board term when they are no longer vice mayor. So is there a reason why this couldn't be any of the council members? Because we're really all equally the same.
It could be any of the council members.
I would personally, I think that would be better, because we may have I mean, for instance, the vice mayor now has a great deal of finance and audit background, but he hasn't always been vice mayor. He's not always going to be vice mayor, but he might be the best person for that particular.
It could be any of the council members. In the time that I've been here, the mayor has served on it, but none of the other council members have been serving on it, and it wasn't brought up that they might want to serve on it. So that can be, we can amend that and change that and bring it back again.
Let's hear what the other council members' questions might be, and then maybe I'll offer that as an amendment to it. So, Vice Mayor.
That was kind of along the lines of my question. Does the position go with the person or the position go with the office being held? Case in point, my term is up this year. I'm hoping to be reelected, but say I wasn't, would my appointment to that disappear, or would that just go with me and I still would be appointed to the board, or would that term out, or what's going to happen with that? So basically, my question is, does it go with the person or does it go with the position, the office?
It seems that right now, the way it's written is that it would go with the office. As I said, it may be that the mayor and vice mayor do not wish to serve at all, and the council would still be responsible for appointing legal residents of the city to the board. But a legal resident wouldn't have a problem with dual office holding. Any other legal resident would not have a problem with dual office holding. Your office right now on council is what gives you that potential for a problem. So we can change it to say that any council, that mayor, vice mayor, or any other council member could serve on the board ex officio.
Councilmember Chambers.
Yes, now, adding a council member to this, does that change anything about how the meetings would be noticed because of sunshine or anything?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was told that the meetings are already noticed, and with any two council members serving, it must be noticed.
Okay.
Yeah, because Gil and I are on them now, so. they
Oh,
have to
okay,
be-
okay. Thank you.
And financial disclosures.
I don't have any questions.
So, any other questions before I close the public hearing?
Can I speak on it real quick?
Sure. Welcome, Chief Kemp.
Yeah, just friendly discussion. I just want to speak on behalf of the pension board chairman for the Temple Terrace Fire Department. One of the things that that I've seen in the past that cities have done, and certainly a board that I've been on before, and most boards that I have been on, is you usually have two firefighters and or a couple police and fire as well if you have a dual pension plan. Then you have a citizen who's elected by everybody else that's on the board, and then the mayor. I've seen a lot where they would appoint somebody. It can be a council member, but normally it is a citizen of that city, because usually they want to get somebody on the board that has experience, and somebody that they realize will gel well with the board. I've never seen where two members of the council have been on, not that it can't be, and I'm not opposed to that, but what I've seen is where the mayor appoints those individuals. It could be you could appoint yourself and or appoint a council member, but that way you're not held to the fact that you have to appoint someone in the council, because there may be nobody on the council that wants it, or nobody on the council. There may be somebody on the council that wants it that's not qualified, and that would be up to the mayor. You could also do it where the council appoints somebody as well. So I just wanted a friendly discussion. That's something I've seen a lot of.
That's how it is, Chief. We're not changing that. The way it is currently, and still will remain even if this passes, is that the council appoints a resident of the city. It's been past practice for the council to appoint the mayor as the resident of the city. I don't know how that practice started, but it is the way you're speaking. We don't necessarily, either currently or even if this passes, we don't need to appoint the mayor or a council member. We're just making ourselves eligible for those positions. But in the future, as Councilmember Abel suggested at the last meeting that we discussed this, we're going to open that up and not just confine it to council members or the mayor. Because we discovered in reviewing this that what we were doing, we all kind of assumed was the way it was written, when in fact it really wasn't. It was just common practice. And so as it is today, just through the normal way things kind of happened, you wound up with the vice mayor and me on there. But that may not be the case. You may wind up in the future with nobody from the council on there. We may say, no, Jim lives in the city and he's got he's an expert in this, so why would we do it?
I've also mentioned, Jim, that a lot of plans have instead of having the two, like you, the mayor would appoint somebody and the finance director would be on the board. Only
Now
because
you're making him angry, though.
No,
He doesn't
I'm
wanna
not
be
saying
on
anyone. No, because they're supposed to have the financial,
Right,
so.
right. Good. No, we're on the right path. The only change I would suggest, and I'm gonna close the public hearing for discussion. So any other questions? Okay, close the public hearing and ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance. We'll get back
An
on
ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Temple Terrace, Chapter 2, Administration and Elections, Article 3, Offices and Employees, Division 3, Pensions and Retirement, amending subsection 4, Firefighters, Section 2-200, Board of Trustees, amending subdivision 5, Police Officers, Section 2-257, Board of Trustees, providing for severability of provisions, providing for codification, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, providing an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And so I'm going to ask for a motion, but I would ask the council members to consider that we make a small change, and instead of restricting this only to the mayor or vice mayor, that we allow the council members, because in essence, we can appoint any resident of the city, and the only 3 people not eligible for appointment would be the 3 of you, because you're on council and you're not included in this. So, Councilmember Chambers.
Okay, I move that we approve the first reading of ordinance amending city code sections 2-200 and 2-257 with the changes that any council member would be eligible.
A motion, do we have a second? Motion and a second. Discussion on the motion? Councilmember Abel.
So please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that this is just to cover us should we be on that board, to make sure we're not doing dual office holding. It's not like saying that a council member or vice mayor or mayor has to be on that board. Okay, that's all.
Other discussion? Not all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, a nay sign? No nays. Ordinance is adopted on first reading and will appear for second reading on July 19th, 2022. But I need to go back to item B because I failed to mention that. The item involving the car wash will also appear for a second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, July 19th, 2022, and I don't think I said that on the record, so. Next item of business is second public hearing and second reading of Ordinance 1528, amending Section 12-72 of the Code entitled Board of Adjustment. I'll open the public hearing and ask City Attorney Pam Shoshone to explain.
As mentioned at last meeting, the proposed amendments to the Board of Adjustment ordinance first would include an aspirational goal of a diversity of membership on the board, specifically with regard to geographic areas of the city, so that we do not end up with a potential conflict with more than one, more than two members being in the same neighborhood and possibly having to recuse themselves should one of their neighbors be an applicant before the board. Also, it would include a diversity of experience on the board, and those are listed here with things that would possibly give a person either more experience or more book knowledge with regard to the types of cases that come before the board. We also had made a slight change to the term of office, again hoping that this would give more opportunity to more citizens to serve on the board. Instead of it being 3-year terms, it would be 2-year terms. However, they may serve 3 consecutive 2-year terms, and that would give a board member a chance to actually be on the board for 6 years. Some of the other changes that are proposed are setting forth a more specific procedure with regard to rehearings. Rehearing is not something new, and currently the board, even under the old or the existing ordinance, does have the opportunity to rehear an item. The law that exists gives all quasi-judicial boards an inherent authority to hold a rehearing. This is an opportunity to correct mistakes the most efficient way. It's better to correct an error that may either be not the board's fault or it could be the board's fault. Mistakes are made by everyone, or sometimes misinformation is given to the board and so a mistake is made. This sets out the procedure. It helps the citizens know what they need to do in order to get a rehearing. It's also very helpful for the clerk, because the clerk is the one that ends up having to take these applications and they administer this. So it makes it easier for the clerk to know whether something's coming in late or how it should be submitted. It also sets forth the standard criteria that courts generally use in granting a rehearing. Rehearings are not automatic. Nobody is entitled to a rehearing, but it sets forth the grounds by which you would base a request for a rehearing. Rehearings are not granted simply because somebody is unhappy with the decision. There has to be a legal basis for it, and this ordinance lets everyone know what that is. Also, it lets the board know, because they can look to that criteria, and if it's not met, they're able to deny that. It also now includes language that is common in the world of variances. Undue and unnecessary hardship is the common language that describes a variance. There are, in fact, I think the city of St. Pete Beach, their application for a variance says right on it, undue and unnecessary hardship variance application. The words are used right in the title. So this is not something that we've just created. This is standard language that is used. The word undue and unnecessary, people oftentimes use them interchangeably. They are very close in meaning. But the word undue is something that attorneys like to use a lot, and your average person doesn't generally use the word undue or unduly. They use the word unnecessary. So hopefully that makes it a little simpler for both the applicants and for board members to understand what the criteria is that they have to look to. We have also included the criteria, the findings that must be made, and the current ordinance says that the board must make findings of fact to support either a denial or an approval of a variance. This clarifies again what those are. It, I think, makes it much clearer as to what things must be looked at in order to grant a variance. For the sake of people listening, a variance, the city's position is always to apply our land development code equally throughout the city. These are our building codes, our zoning codes. When someone comes in for a variance, they are essentially asking permission to not abide by our code. And they have a reason that they need to not abide by our code. And you don't just get a variance because this is what you want to do. A variance is something that is based on a hardship caused by something unique to your property, either based on its shape, its size, or its topography. And it's something unique about your property that's different from your neighbor's property that is causing a hardship when we apply our laws. So if you've got, if you have a pie-shaped lot, it's going to be much harder for you to put a square building on it than somebody who has a square lot or a rectangular lot. So therefore, you may need a slight variance to our setback ordinances, our code that says you've got to have your building within a certain footprint, and you cannot go over the line into. You cannot encroach over the line. So this is to come before, those kind of things would come before the board to ask the board to consider giving you a dispensation, say, and you to not have to follow our land development code. And a variance must be the very minimal one necessary to accomplish the purpose. You don't get to do whatever you want. Granted, it is your property, but we all must abide by the building code. So that's what the board basically considers. They are there to hear essentially appeals from our Director of Community Development's decisions, and he is there to be the gatekeeper on our land development code. And oftentimes, we recognize within the city, they recognize Gus as one of our planners, they recognize within the city that there may be a hardship. We don't object to every request that's made. Sometimes we recognize, yes, there is a hardship, and our city staff will come up in front of the Board of Adjustment and recommend approval of that variance. They don't always recommend that it is great a variance as the person is requesting, but they oftentimes will recommend approval. Sometimes they recommend denial, and the board needs to make a decision then. It is up to their discretion to make a decision, obviously, though, within the confines of the law. So that really is why we've made many of these changes, to try to make our code more specific so that it is easier to follow for both the citizens and for staff and for the Board of Adjustment itself. So if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Schoen. I do have members of the public who requested to speak on this item. Mr. Jack Ritter. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the board, this thing has got me kind of bumfuzzled. I've been through code enforcement. I've been through variance several times in this city, and I really don't know where we stand. But specifically to this issue, the appeal hearing is granted by the board, all right? Is it a de novo hearing, or can they bring in new witnesses and X, Y, Z? I look to council probably to answer that.
Well, this is time for you to speak to us, not
Okay,
ask questions
all
of the
right.
council.
Who's got an answer? Anybody?
We'll see when you're
Right.
done.
But let me explain a couple of things. I've got a crazy piece of property. It's 300 and some feet deep. It faces two streets, but yet I've got a circle cut out of the back because of a circle that belongs to the city right across the street. I built a carport a number of years ago, and it was approved, all right? I wanted to enclose it, not change the footprint or anything. The next thing I know is I have to have a variance. I can't tell you how many times and how many people within the city I talked to get this done. And I finally threw up my hands and said, whatever you people want to do, because between the carport and the house was 18 feet, and I wanted to enclose that. You should hear the restrictions that they placed on this. I won't live long enough to get those changed, but somebody needs to have reason when they do this. And my piece of property, I had to have a 16-foot side yard setback. Why? Because I got 220 feet across the front. Why should I provide the open space and the neighbor next door has got a single lot and he has 7.5 feet? So think about these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ritter. Ms. Annette Rennie? Good evening.
Annette Rennie, 9512 Woodland Ridge Drive. I'm a little upset. This new policy for rehearing in the Board of Adjustments, this new policy should not go backwards. On any hearing that we've already heard, the decisions that have been made should be done. If this policy is going to go into effect for rehearing, it should be from the time it's put in writing and the board is educated. We've already had so many educated people talk to us, but go forth in writing for the rehearing and put into a new policy, because that's not what it was when we were, appointed. We were asked to sign something called Code of Conduct, and I think it was fair and I thought it was good, and I read through it and I signed it. But this also has to apply to the other people who are there, including, I'm sorry, but the city attorney, who was very rude during some of our hearings. And I'm not trying to be nasty to you. I'm just saying that this should apply to everybody. I asked the city council and the mayor not to go backwards, but if you're going to do this second reading on this policy and take it forward for rehearings, do it for the upcoming hearings, not the past things that we've heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rennie. Jan Tummelson. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I appreciate the time. I'm interested in several things. I've read through this. I'm a former planner with Hillsborough County. My question is, how are you going to get board members from all parts of the city, first of all? Okay, is this approval is not affecting any prior decisions, or approvals in the past? And I want to have explained the exact process for bringing back something to the Board of Adjustment. Okay, only items that are going forward as of the date this is approved should be under this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tummelson. Are there other members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Yes, ma'am. Please approach, Just begin with your name and city of residence, please. Welcome.
Patty Vergara, 409 Park Ridge, Temple Terrace. I want to speak to the residency situation myself. I'm responsible for 3 board members who live on the same street being on the Board of Adjustment. I served 3 terms, then I had to quit because I aged out or whatever happens after 9 years, and I came back again because there was a shortage of people to fill the spaces. So I went to my neighbors and I found 3 people, actually 4. One had to resign due to her profession. We're all of various political opinions. We agree on very little, other than Temple Terrace is a wonderful place to live and we want to keep it beautiful. So I don't think it matters if we live next door to each other or we live a mile apart. And I just wanted to say how we ended up with so many people on one street. It's all my fault. And I'm happy for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vergara. Are there other members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, council member questions. Councilmember Chambers.
Yes, along with residency, you mentioned about there could be a case where members would have to recuse themselves. And you mentioned is it a street, a block? I mean, who would determine who would have to recuse themselves on that?
Generally, it would be on the same block. I mean, obviously, you have to make a limit at some point, and is it a block? Is it 3 blocks? But if you have board members all in the same block, and one of their neighbors right in the same block makes a request in front of the board, the people all living as neighbors, you can't make a decision on your neighbor. And so when we suddenly are getting people right in the same one block, it's going to require that they recuse themselves, and we will be without a quorum. This ordinance is written as an aspirational goal. It isn't demanding that everybody be diverse. It's saying that that whenever possible, if you have enough people applying to the board, then you need to consider the diversity aspect of it. And one of the people who live on the block, if there's enough people, will have to be told no. And the vote would be for somebody who lives a mile away. If you can't get that, you can't get that. This is a smaller city, and you're not always able to get enough applicants. That's all.
Okay, a follow-up back to, who would watch for that? I mean, would that be city staff? When an application comes in, who would bring it to someone's attention?
Yeah, I mean, the clerk's office is usually pretty up on this and up on who serves on all of the boards. They know, they bring things to my attention frequently, and they would be aware of this.
Well, the applications would still come to council, though.
Oh, yes.
They
yes.
wouldn't be culled out at a staff.
I meant if a case comes before the board, who would look at the case and say it's on this street and these board members have a conflict?
The staff would, either the clerk's office or the city planner would know.
Okay, we would put something in place that we have a way to enforce that. Or not enforce is a bad word, but to look at it and say this is a conflict.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And hopefully the board member themselves would recognize it. If they know that they would look at the agenda and see that their neighbor is the applicant, hopefully they would speak up and say, I have a conflict, I need to abstain from voting on this one. So we rely on them too to be forthcoming.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Abel.
I understand that this is a problem with having a quorum if some people have to recuse themselves or are not absent. But I noticed that in the revisions, it changed a quorum in this board of 5 from 3 to 4, and I was wondering what was the basis for that change.
Let's see. What number are you looking at?
Let me see if I can find it. Oh, it's in General Rules of Procedure number 3. page 4.
I see it. We are aware that many boards of adjustment actually require a supermajority in order to overrule a decision of staff. Rather than require a supermajority here, we still allowed it to be remain a simple majority, but we did change it to have at least 4 people at any meeting to make a quorum, so that there would be 4 people always at least making the decision.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. I have a few other questions, if that's all right. Okay. So on page 2, item number 5, it says any board member may be removed from office by the city council for cause. And I was wondering if this cause was defined anywhere in any of our procedures for citizen boards.
It's not defined here, and that's not something that we've added. It was always written that way.
Since it's underlined, though, I thought that it was
What number
probably
is
added.
that? I'm sorry.
6. Page 2, I believe.
I think it's because it changed to be number 6, but it was originally elsewhere in the ordinance. I'm sorry, haven't found an answer yet.
Haven't found the page yet. Where is it? Page 1,
Oh, it's page
1A, attachment A, page 1.
If you'll look a little bit higher up on that same page in number 2, where the whole entire paragraph has been stricken through, that same line exists in 2. So it was always there. We had just pulled it out, and it's now a separate line, and now is number 6.
Okay,
but
thank
it
you.
reads, the information is still the same.
Okay, so follow-up question then, for cause, for example, for some other, like a charter member, there's like a process for what constitutes cause. And I'm wondering if for citizen boards, do we have a process for what constitutes?
I'm not aware that we have that written down anywhere.
Okay. And let me
That would obviously be up to council's discretion, and it's like what the Supreme Court said about pornography or obscenity. You'll know it when you see it. So I think we've left it up to that.
Okay, and my last question is, it's like section 3. Actually, it's on page 3 of 7. I don't know exactly because I took screenshots so I could annotate. But it says that violations of such conditions and safeguards, when made a part of the terms under which the variance is granted, shall be deemed a violation of this chapter, shall automatically render the variance null and void, and shall be punishable under this chapter. And I didn't really understand the punishable part.
It would end up being a code violation.
Oh, okay.
So that's it. Again, a variance is something that should be relatively hard to come by. And so oftentimes conditions are, one is granted, but conditions are oftentimes recommended by staff, and the board is asked to include those conditions if they grant the variance. Sometimes the board comes up with their own conditions in granting a variance, and they're very important. So the variance, in essence, doesn't exist then without those conditions. And should somebody either the applicant or somebody in the future violate those conditions, because a variance runs with the land then forever. The applicant will be long gone, and yet the variance will remain. And neighbors change, and a neighbor who originally had no objection, now you've got new neighbors and are wondering why I have this thing built into the setback, So the conditions are very important, and this really emphasizes that the conditions must be adhered to, or else you lose the variance.
Understood. Thank you, that's all.
Vice Mayor.
I got a few questions. Number one, for the recusal issue, what do other locations have? You've done some research that I thought. What do some of the other locations have in their recusal? Is it addressed?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
What do they do in St. Pete? What do we do in Plant City for this type of situation?
If it's somebody who, say they've done, just like with council, if it's somebody who is your next door neighbor and you're being now asked to make a decision on their site plan, and the site is right next door to you, or if it's someone who does business with you, it's your customer, your client. If there's an appearance of impropriety, you should recuse yourself. And it doesn't always specifically say who. Obviously, you know from all the training you have to go through every year with regard to your ethical training requirements, that there are certain relationships that impact your ethics, and therefore you should not make decisions concerning those people when they come before you. The same thing applies, though, to the Board of Adjustment and the Code Enforcement Board. And we all should be very cognizant of that. Everybody serving on a board should be cognizant of that. You want to avoid an appearance of impropriety.
Good. Well, okay, that's what I was hoping you were going to say. What would happen, say we approve this, what would happen tomorrow to the composition of the board?
That would be completely up to council to decide what to do, to either continue on and wait till everybody ages out, as Ms. Vergaro said, although I don't know, I don't know that I want to say that, but termed out. We're not getting old. Or since as you mentioned last time, you know, this is not an easy task for board members. It does require some skill, some knowledge. They are asked to look at surveys, they're asked to look at site plans, they're asked to review our land development code and make application of these laws. So that's why we included these qualifications in this type of experience. So if we pass this, you could disband this board. You could ask for applications from the community again. The current board members can certainly submit their applications. They would not be excluded in any way. And we can try to open this up a little more and try to get some more people onto the board with these specific backgrounds and qualifications.
So that would be a subsequent discussion by council as to what to do if this is changed.
Yes, and you can do it today.
Okay.
You can do it at the next council meeting.
All right, next question then is the rehearing issue. That seems to be a very touchy topic. What are we, in these changes, there's a lot of little nits and lights changes. What are we suggesting? Are we suggesting everything that's open, grandfathers in, or do we go to the next round? If a rehearing is petitioned after today, these new rules would apply? Or would it go to the rehearing, whatever rehearings might be in the pipeline now?
Okay.
How will that apply?
So it sort of makes me smile when I say that when I hear that a rehearing should not be for anything that's happened in the past. A rehearing by its very nature is on something that's already happened. You don't rehear something in the future. You can only rehear something you've already heard. So if any case coming before the board, moving forward, somebody feels that the grounds are met for a rehearing, whether it be the city, whether it be the applicant, whether it be a neighbor. A neighbor has standing to file a petition for writ of cert in the circuit court, and simply skip the rehearing and go straight to circuit court and say, I don't feel that the decision was correct. I live next door. I don't like it, and they can go to court. The purpose of the rehearing is to hopefully avoid that and instead do it the less expensive way, the faster way, and to avoid a protracted hearing that could take years to simply go to the next hearing of the board.
Well, I guess my point,
So-
I guess my point is that there appears to me to be a perception that we're doing these changes to circumvent anything that's happening right now. And I don't, I want either we acknowledge that or refute it and say, no, it has nothing to do with that.
No, I refuted it has nothing to do with it. There has always been a rehearing possibility within this code. That has not changed at all. The concept of rehearing may be new to these board members because nobody may have asked them for one while they've sat on the board. It doesn't mean that other boards haven't gotten requests for rehearing, but apparently the board members that are currently on the board have never been asked to do a rehearing. But it doesn't mean that that possibility didn't always exist. It did. And a motion was made for a rehearing by the city. It was granted. So now there will be a brand new hearing on that particular matter. So that one's done.
That's my point.
That one's
That's
done.
the point I'm trying to get
Yeah.
across. That that's finished, and that's going to happen irrespective of what we do tonight.
Correct.
Okay. All right, and last question, I promise. Last question is, if we have, I remember back when I was back on Board of Adjustment, if there was an issue that kept coming up, eventually after one, 2 or 3 times, it got kicked to council. Hey, we got a problem here. You guys need to address this. How is this outlined how is this issue addressed in the current and/or future as amended? What's the mechanism to kick it back to council for a land use review?
I don't think that this changes it at all.
Okay.
The board or staff, if they see that there is a recurring issue that is something that's coming up and impacting multiple people throughout the city, it should be addressed by council as a possible amendment to the land development code. If 20 people or even 10 people are coming forward and asking for the exact same variance, we probably have a problem. And within the current Board of Adjustment ordinance, if the Board of Adjustment happens to see that there is an issue and there's a problem, they can come in front of council and make that recommendation to council and tell you about this. And it exists already in the ordinance.
Okay, that to me is an important factor. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Other questions? Other questions? I will close the hearing and ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, amending the Temple Terrace Code of Ordinances by amending Section 12-72, entitled Board of Adjustment, by changing the duties and membership composition of the board, refining the hardship criteria, adding a rehearing process, and making other administrative changes, providing for severability, providing for codification, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It is now time for a motion. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the second reading of ordinance 1528 upon second reading. It's written funny. Yes. That's it.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. Okay. Ordinance is adopted on second reading. Before we skip this step, though, I'd like to try to get some clarity what we're doing here, so everybody leaves here knowing what it is we're doing, and we don't have a dangling participle until next month or something. So, city attorney or city manager.
Well, I think that, I would just ask that this ordinance takes effect immediately upon becoming law. So we have to decide how we're going to implement it. And if it'll be rebranding the Board of Adjustment, basically, or continuing on and doing it piecemeal.
Can we take a motion for discussion?
Sure.
I move that we let it happen naturally through attrition, moving forward. As the terms expire, making sure that we enforce this scenario. I'm not in favor of blowing up the board and starting over. I think that sends a bad, well, to me, that sends a bad message. I'm in favor of, if people term out, we enforce that criteria. Or let the new criteria work through it.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
For discussion, I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Councilmember Abel.
So specifically, if we do this in such a way that we're waiting for people to term out and bringing new people in, I think that pertains specifically to just a few things in the ordinance. One of which is the geography of where they live or the qualifications of that particular person. But it doesn't really address the other aspects that we're looking at, such as the criteria for approving a variance. So I think that we might need to amend that to include how we are expecting the Board of Adjustment to follow procedures as they're doing their work.
Well, listen, we specify that in the ordinance. I mean, redefining or better defining hardship. I don't see where where we're changing anything else. I'm not sure how to answer that.
Does it involve some sort of training piece where the Board of Adjustment needs to have a different understanding or something like that?
Maybe. I'm not opposed to that, but that'd be a function of the city attorney holding the requisite seminars, whatever, training.
They just completed a second training session in the last year, so that was just completed at the last meeting.
Okay.
I don't see any need to do anything. I'm not willing to blow up the board if that was said. I just think that as opposed to board members and their residency, I would just, as board members leave and apply to come back on, I just think we need to look at that and not do anything tomorrow or anything like that. The rest of it goes into effect. Most of it's just clarified what we're doing anyway. So I wouldn't think we need to have any other motion.
That's my motion, right?
Okay. We have a motion on the table and a second. And,
If we could clarify exactly what the motion was.
well,
Okay, clarifying the motion is for the timing of the implementation of the geographical location of the participants, that occurs through natural attrition as people term out. I know they're getting wordy, but.
okay, and that also includes the preferred qualifications that we're looking for.
Correct, which are already there. I think it just reinforces the preferred qualifications. That was always part of it. Real estate or construction or business leaders, land development, I believe that was always part of it, unless I'm mistaken.
Well, that's part of the revisions. I don't know what the original, but if you look at the proposed ordinance, that's new language.
Well, how different are the requirements then? The preferred occupations.
Right now, there are really no there are really no preferred occupations at this time. It also doesn't limit the geography at this time. One thing that we did change is that was specific and is not an aspirational goal is that members not be related or live in the same household. So, because we did have related members on the board. So that is a specific, and I feel that should apply right away and not through attrition.
We still have related members.
I don't know. I'd have to ask the city.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that. It's, retract your second, I retract my motion to reword. We'll reword, is that the proper way to do it?
I'll retract my second.
Okay.
And another possibility, I know that there's a motion on the floor, is that.
Not anymore.
Okay. Oh, no.
So, yeah.
Okay. Is that, that we continue on for a certain amount of time, but that all of the terms expire, say, at the end of the year, and we have time then to put this out to the community and to seek new applicants?
Can I make a comment
Sure,
before you
please,
make your
please,
motion?
please.
I'm going to make the comment anyway, so just if you don't mind, I'll make it before the motion's made. I see what you're trying to do. I get it. I understand. I don't see the point in us revising our law if we're not going to revise the law. I mean, if this is a good idea, let's do it. And if it's not a good idea, why did we just pass it? And so I could get behind the idea of, we're not trying to act like we're doing personal, like this is personal. It's not. So if we wanted to go to the end of the year and then re-advertise, to take effect January 15th or January, and they all come before us but I think we need to do what we just did, what we just passed. There's no point in us saying, well, we need to have these preferred qualifications, we need to make sure that we have diversity if we can achieve it, and then not do it. They'll take 3 years for this ordinance to get implemented if we do that. And I just don't think that's wise policy. I understand that we're sensitive to, but everybody's welcome to reapply. Chances are, if there's I don't know if there is, but if there's 3 or 4 people that live next door to each other, chances are we're not going to reappoint all 4 of them, because that's what we're trying to get away from. And chances are, if we get a land use attorney that applies, and real estate, I know we have real estate people in already, and they'll probably get reappointed. But this, I think, is a good idea. If you want to postpone it until the beginning of the year or something like that, I'll support that. But I can't get behind the idea of let's pass this great new law and then wait 3 years to enforce it. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I also want to say that this issue of rehearings, first of all, that's not new. All this ordinance does is better define the grounds and the procedure for doing that. That's not new. Everything that's done, there's no such thing in the United States as a final public opinion or a final legal opinion unless you've been to the Supreme Court. That's it. Everything that's done is subject to appeal and rehearing. Everything that we do, the Code Board does, the BOA does, the Circuit Court, unless you've been to the U.S. Supreme Court, everything, there's no such thing as this is it and we can't rehear it. That's the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. That doesn't work. You just can't do that. And so, anyway, you make your motion, but I could get behind some delay, and I know I'm only one person up here, but I don't like the idea of us pass a new law because it's a better idea, and then we wait 3 years to make it happen. So, anyway,
Not sure how to
you
word
have the floor.
I'll defer, I'll pass on the motion. I'm not sure how to word it. To implement it for the end of the year? Is that?
We could.
Well, I was thinking that you could advertise the Board of Adjustment as being restructured and implemented, and the city is now accepting citizen applications to serve on the board. The city will accept those applications through December 31st. All board members now could apply as anyone else could. And then at the first meeting in January, you vote on the applications and you create that board. You don't want to do away with the whole thing immediately because you have upcoming issues on existing meetings. So you couldn't just say effective tomorrow, we're not going to have a Board of Adjustment, I don't think.
The only thing I would add to that is I would think it would make more sense to do this. The new council members are sworn in December. So I think I'd like to do it with the seated council so that some poor new council members, first new meeting, and they're here going, what the heck is that? I don't understand. They haven't found the bathroom yet, and we're asking them to, reseat a Board of Adjustment. So is that enough time to make you comfortable if we did it beginning of December? I know I said first of the year, but now I'm starting to think.
Yeah, I think I can get behind that. Yeah.
That would be enough time for anything that's in the pipeline
Sure.
should be out of the pipeline.
Should be out of the
by then.
pipeline. That's what I'm trying to avoid is,
I know.
just,
I'm
okay,
with you.
everybody got to go home now and start all over.
James, let's clear this up before he makes a motion.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, Vice Mayor.
Yeah,
No, I don't care.
well, there's no motion, so
Yeah.
if I can have some discussion.
No, but let's, yeah, go ahead.
Are there now rotating expiration dates on our members? What I mean, they're not all up at the same date.
Correct.
So by doing this all at one time, now we've lost the rotation part of our boards where people serve and there's continuity.
Some would have to be appointed like we do for other new boards. Some would have to be appointed to one-year terms and some to two, so that we restore that staggered.
Okay, so we would have to figure that out.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just a little concerned. We appointed these people ourselves. We knew their qualifications when we voted for them, whether it was this year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I'm just a little concerned about all that. But I will go with the group.
Well, do you have a proposed solution? I think that's what we're trying to do, is come up with something that we are all comfortable with, that shows respect to our current board members without waiting.
Do the motion, go ahead.
No, I mean, my motion was to support yours, and that. So let's get this someplace.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah, please do.
By golly.
God darn it, go
How's
ahead.
that? I don't like to make motions, but I can, right?
Yes.
I'm allowed, am I not?
Then you have to pass the gavel?
Yes, you need to pass the gavel so that you.
Do you want me to pass the gavel, or do you want to do it yourself?
No, I don't want to do it.
I'll do
I'm
it.
not sure how to do it.
Councilmember Abel.
Give me just a second. I want to get it right. I move to restructure the Board of Adjustment by issuing the applications to be considered at the first meeting in December. And at that time, we will review the applications and select our Board of Adjustment along with the law that we just created. Anything to add?
With a staggered terms,
With staggered terms.
we'll figure out.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I have a discussion on the date. December 1st, I don't think works. Either that's the first meeting of the new council.
First meeting, I think, was your
I
intent.
think I was trying to say first meeting of December, but I may have said it wrong.
No, you did, but I think with our elections coming up, the new council is either sworn in the second meeting in November or the first meeting in December, depending on when the the clerk of the court certifies the election. So either one, December 1st is either with a new council or the swearing-in date.
In that case, I would amend it to put this at the final meeting in November, second meeting in November.
Okay. Let's hold on the second for a moment. We have a motion.
That still could be swearing in.
Let's wait till we get the timeline clarified.
Second meeting after the validation by the court.
Second meeting or first meeting?
What I'm wondering is if we could do this before the swearing in, but that's,
No,
That's dicey.
yeah, that's,
no, don't want.
Weeks after certification of the election, the election's on November 8th. It's usually a couple weeks after that.
so it's probably the first meeting in December.
Oh, I would, if we're trying to do it if you're trying to do it before the new council members are sworn in, I would say the first meeting in November to be on the safe side. Because if the election would be at the first week, and then if the certification is 2 weeks later, we're now at our second meeting in November already.
In that case, I'll amend my motion to say the first meeting in November is when we'll take the action.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Okay, second.
Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. We have a plan.
I resign, just so you know, from the Board of Adjustment tonight.
Okay? Okay,
And I think you're gonna get 2 more.
okay. Any carryover council business from previous councils? Any other carryover council business? If not, new business, board reports, Councilmember Chambers.
I have one thing, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the 4th of July, yesterday's events. Again, thank you, city staff, all of you guys that did a great job. I do want to make one thing that months ago, Director Langfeld promised us good weather, and he succeeded in that. Thank you very much. Even though you backed out of that comment a little bit, so. But anyway, thank you. But it was good work on all the city staff. Thank you very much. That's all.
Other council business, board reports, new business. Very good. City manager,
I have nothing tonight.
city attorney,
I have nothing.
we're good. Okay, I don't think I have anything else. Paul, really great job, and all of your staff, wonderful. And I know you can kind of get the wind taken out of your sails a little bit with one negative comment or something, but it was wonderful. So you guys all did a terrific job. So.
All the departments.
All the departments did. So. If there are no other business to come before the council, we will be adjourned.